Filipino guy been? That Asian American Filipino guy, or is he Filipino Asian American? Whatever he calls himself. Hi everyone. It's Emil. It's Emil Guillermo. If you're wondering, maybe I'm so lucky that you would wonder, where is he? I've been making you watch the repeats, not because I've wanted to, but I've been a little under the weather. There, to use a phrase that's kind of nebulous and ambiguous. Under the weather? What? Where, Emil? Well, I've been just, I have had that kind of not quite COVID, not quite, respiratory thing, coughing, phlegmy. Ooh, very phlegmy. Kind of like Brussels kind of phlegmy. But not like really sick, but, sick enough that I thought, oh, well, maybe my legion of fans can just listen to the repeats. I mean, because we're going from primary to award show to, I guess the next award show is going to be the Oscars. Sometimes we'll talk about sports, but the last time I think we were talking about the Iowa caucuses, and sure enough, Trump won. And everyone was thinking about, oh, well, this surely means that Trump is so far ahead, he's going to cruise in New Hampshire. And here we are, the weekend into New Hampshire, the primary takes place on Tuesday. And Trump is desperate. Trump is like pulling out all the stops. He wants to like win it. And you can tell that he's kind of desperate because he's going racist. And so we'll talk about that today. This is Emil Amok's Takeout, my takes on all things considerable. Since I've been gone, that was sort of the issue. I mean, I was going to talk about, before Iowa, the little gaffe that Nikki Haley had where she said, oh, Civil War. She doesn't mention the Civil War and slavery, right? Like she forgot about it conveniently. But, it's really a tactic on her part to forget about history, to forget about race. And it's up to us to remind her that, hey, race and history are intertwined, especially when it comes to American history. And when, in terms of the black-white situation, yeah, of course you got to mention the Civil War and slavery. And you don't mention slavery, well, it's only because you believe that it really is far more an economic states' rights issue. And, the immorality of owning a human being, well, that's not important. Of course it is. But, that would have gone away. I mean, she mentioned it in New Hampshire while campaigning in Iowa. Iowa is so white that, they didn't care. And people did care about it, and they talked about it. But then, other things happened during the Iowa caucuses, or leading up into the caucuses and post-caucus. And so I thought maybe we wouldn't hear anything again. But sure enough, here in New Hampshire, Nikki Haley makes another gaffe saying that America is not a racist country. And it makes people scratch their head and say, what are you talking about? I mean, forget about black-white. Let's include the first native peoples. Let's include not the Indian American that Nikki Haley is, but the real native Indians. Tell me about how unracist it was, how they were treated by the founding fathers, by the people in power, by America. It's impossible to say that America is not a racist country. Can't say that. So, I want to talk about that today because it's kind of bothered me. And then it's just other things have happened with Trump and Haley not really standing up and zinging back, because the fact is she can't zing Trump because she stands for a lot of things that Trump stands for. And brownface, which is maybe the disappointing thing about Nikki Haley. That as we go into New Hampshire, you find that she is not the alternative. She is really Trump in brownface and a dress. She is. I mean, I guess that is maybe the most extreme way of putting it, because you'd have to put Trump in a dress. But if you can imagine that's really where Nikki Haley's politics is. That's why she doesn't attack Donald Trump as hard as she could, because she, frankly, is a lot like Donald Trump. And I'll get to the column I just wrote for the Asian American Legal Defense and Education Fund, aldef.org/blog. So we'll talk about all that. Before we get into that, I do want to mention how, wow, the news breaking within the last hour or so, Alec Baldwin got the grand jury came back, indicted him. And the same case is back again. And after the prosecution was found to have bungled the case, a new set of prosecutors came back before a new grand jury in New Mexico and got the votes to indict Alec Baldwin again. And we'll see what his defense answer. His lawyers say that they'll be prepared to answer whatever, but it's never ending, it seems, for Alec Baldwin. That's the news that has broken just within the last couple hours. Some other things. Everyone's in the stock market. You know, it's hard not to be in the stock market if you have a 401k or an IRA. What are you going to be in, right? Well, I put all my money under a mattress, Emil. Okay, yeah, then you're losing money. But, this is the thing. There are more people in the market than ever before. And some of the biggest proponents are the newest type of, segments in the market, people of color, blacks, people with money suddenly. Where do you put it? You put it in the market. So the market is going crazy today because, frankly, the economy is doing much better than everyone wants to believe. And as I said, more people are in the market now, which is ironic because more people are in the market at a time when in America there is greater inequality than ever before. Two things can be true, but that's kind of the interesting thing. If you, and I'm not talking about people with like real money. I'm just like if you have a regular retirement, you got to put it into something. So you put it into index funds or something tied to the market. That's America, right? So I was reading something the other day in the Wall Street Journal that Goldman Sachs has decided to dump selling to Wall Street. That's the ironic thing. Goldman Sachs isn't even selling to Wall Street, or it isn't selling to Main Street. They're only going to its wealthiest clientele. And by wealthy, this is how skewed it is in America. Wealthy is considered $60 million. Oh, yeah. I started putting it in the market when it was too big for my mattress. I had to get 3 mattresses. And I said, oh, that's it. I'm drawing the line there. I'm putting it in the bank now. 60 million. Goldman Sachs saying it's dumping its Main Street clients. It's regular folks. Not making enough money. We only want the wealthy. 60 million. That's the way of America. And, this is the thing. You hear people say, oh, the economy is bad. The economy is doing really well. The unfortunate thing, it's doing really well for people who already have money. 60 million. I mean, look, for a lot of us, if you had 60,000, that would be, oh, man, that's a windfall. That's a lot. 60,000 is nothing compared to people with 60 million, which is kind of like the benchmark for the definition of a wealthy client by Goldman Sachs. So you want to talk about real problems in America? It's that inequality problem. I say this as a guy who speaks to you from his closet. Here I am in my closet. End speciesism. So let's see some other things. So since I last talked to you, we had, this is Emil Amok's Takeout, my takes on all things considerable. We talk about the news. We talk about it from an Asian American perspective. And the big news really since Monday, which was the confluence of the Iowa caucuses, Martin Luther King Jr. Day, and the Emmys. And what a day, right? It was Martin Luther King Day, and you can see how, if you looked at your clock and you could see the arc of justice, or the arc bending toward justice, right? What is it? The Martin Luther King phrase, the arc of society bending toward justice. And then you could see it stop at night when the Iowa caucuses were on. It's weird. The caucuses are like just neighbors talking to neighbors, and you can hear people. The networks are all talking to people going to caucuses. It's not a primary per se, but it's like, people voting for high school president. You get up in your little meeting room. You have your proxies speaking out on behalf of the different candidates, and then you vote and you tally them up. You have little scraps of paper. I mean, very American, right? But it's so white, it's hard to say that that's any kind of barometer for where anything is in America. It's so undiverse. It's so, like I said, I've had some, it wasn't a close call. I mean, my car broke down in Iowa. It was not a friendly time. I felt really out of place in Iowa. And it was in summertime when it, in the cold. Now you say, oh, I understand the cold. You'd be out of place, Emil. But no, it was the summertime. It's hot. And people kept saying, oh, well, you ought to go to the state fair. You get a deep fried Twinkie. No, thank you. It's not in my diet. So, yeah, Iowa was truly disappointing. But it's funny because the interpretation was, oh, Trump won big. He won 51%. And the closest person was DeSantis at like 30 points away. And then Haley was third. And DeSantis, I mean, how can you claim that you are in the race when you're 30 points behind Trump, right? I mean, so Trump won? Yes, but not really. I mean, if you look at it, the weather was cold. It sort of put a damper on the turnout. And it appears that, New Hampshire might be slightly closer, maybe different, because slightly more educated, more suburban voters who are open. They're not Democrats, but there are independents, and they can vote in the primary. They just have to declare that they're Republicans. Trump is trying to say, oh, that just means that Democrats are helping out Haley. Democrats are not helping out Haley. Because as I point out in my column today, Haley is not much different than Trump. Not the only thing that's different about Nikki Haley and Donald Trump is the color of her skin. And guess what? Donald Trump likes to point that out all the time. Talk about, the anti-affirmative action Republicans who say, oh, we only care about the content of one's character. Or no, not Donald Trump. Color of one's skin. Important to him. And he's proving it in his most vicious racist rhetoric thus far in New Hampshire. So anyway, New Hampshire happened, which really negated, Iowa happened, which really negated Martin Luther King Day. You can really feel a sense maybe that it wasn't, the country wasn't so united. People aren't talking about race equity. So many people want to not talk about race equity. So that's why I was really happy when on last Monday night, Emmy night, Beef won for limited series. Now, albeit, they split off into another category, so they didn't have to compete with Succession, which is sort of like white racist fantasy, white dominance, white supremacist racist fantasy, versus Beef, which is the Asian American version of This Is Modern Life in Asian America, right? And here's the inequality that exists between the Ali Wong character, who is a business person, somewhat successful, drives a Mercedes, and the Stephen Yeun character, who drives a truck. They get into a minor accident, funny, right? An act of road rage, two bad Asian drivers, and they take it to the hilt. They just amp it up, and it causes this whole series that's so fascinating that it takes you deep into the bowels of Asian American life that most people don't even know. The Korean evangelicals, I first discovered them maybe 20 years ago in Atlanta. I got invited to do a speaking thing. Man, number one, they've got good bands, good musicianship, good singing. I mean, they're praise bands. I mean, and you get into that a little bit. You get that bit of the Asian American subculture in Beef. And then you go deep into the desert, deep into the wilderness, and it's a fight for survival. It's a tremendous story, and well deserving of an Emmy. And they won the Golden Globe, so we were prepped for this. But the one thing about Beef that I'll say is, people don't know this story. They don't know this about Asian American. They don't know anything about Asian American history, let alone modern Asian America. So I was so happy to see, number one, I'm so happy to see it made. Number two, to see it receive the artistic accolades. And it's historic, right? No other Asian American program, no other Asian American actors, no other Asian American directors. It was really fantastic. 824, congratulations. Everything Everywhere all at once. That was a movie. That was a kind of like sci-fi movie. And that's good. Look, it cleaned up the Oscars. And now here's Beef. This is a turning point for Asian Americans in showbiz, I hope. And this is what is kind of interesting. That, Asian Americans, in some ways, politics is important. But more important is that we show up. More important is that we see ourselves in this American society. So if we're on TV, if we're in the movies, for some people, that's more important. It's more important that we're reflected in the media. No matter what, the lowly talk shows, radio, TV, just regular news media, the world I was in. And now we're in theater and Hollywood and TV and Netflix. We got K-pop in music. I mean, we're represented. We got Olivia Rodrigo and Bruno Mars. I mean, it's a diverse cultural scene. In some ways, that's more important. We think that's more important. I mean, it's not. I mean, it is, but The other thing is more important. Who's in charge of the purse strings? Who's in charge of policy? Who gets the medical care? Who gets, health care? Who gets education? Who gets housing? Who gets jobs? Who gets the benefit of public policy? Who gets protected from environmental pollution? The economic problems that come up when big corporations dump their pollution in areas where people of color, Asian Americans live. I'm talking about places like Richmond, California, and the oil companies there. I mean, all that is a matter of policy, and that's why democracy, voting, participation counts too. But in many ways, we wait years for that. And it seems like, if we can just get a better Susie Wong movie, if we could just get, a better musical on Broadway with Asians, if we could just get, representation, if we see a reflection of ourselves in modern culture, that would be fine for now. That'll hold us. But now we're there. And now it's a matter of, well, how do you think we got here? We got people behind the scenes. We got producers. We got directors. We got people with money. We got people who recognize that 26 million Asian Americans have a universal story, and people can learn from our stories, that we have something in common. And that's why that's important, right? I mean, that's important for that reason. So we can look at ourselves and say, hey, we got something in common. We're Americans, part of this diverse nation. So beef was a breakthrough on Monday. And if you haven't seen it, it really is. I don't think I'm spoiling anything for you by saying the upshot is, hey, we can care for one another. We can show care and love toward one another. Even if we were bitter enemies. That's kind of the message I got, right? Oh, that's simplistic. No, that's just a basic message from beef. Go see. It should be required viewing once every year, maybe once every 2 years. I'll never tire of it. I mean, I just remember sitting down to watch it. It's okay, give it the 10-minute test. Episode 1, 2, 3, 4. Oh, I just kept binging. Finally had to go to sleep. Check it out, Beef, on Netflix. So, big day last Monday, Iowa, MLK Day, Beef. And now, like I said, we have reached the zenith where we are reflected in our culture and people still don't get us. They don't know Koreans from Chinese, from Filipinos to Japanese. They don't know. Oh, you're all just Asian American, right? Well, that's our umbrella. And this is what bugs me about Nikki Haley, right? So my column on the ALDEF blog, Asian American Legal Defense and Education Fund, aldef.org/blog. It's entitled, In New Hampshire, Nikki Haley is the Racism Denier. Former South Carolina Governor Nikki Haley said this week that America is not a racist country. And then Donald Trump proved her wrong by calling Haley by her Indian name, Nimrata Nikki Randhawa Haley, just to rile up the scores of racists in Trump's Republican MAGA base. Interesting. I just checking out some of the stories. CNN Politics had a story. And at the end, as a legitimate news story should have, if there's a mistake, you put a correction. And so they do a story about Nimarata Nikki Randhawa Haley, and they put down correction. This story has been updated with the correct spelling of Nikki Haley's first name, Nimarata. Why? Now, why Nimarata? It's because Trump put an even finer point on all this, purposely referring to Haley in social media posts as Nikki Nimrata Haley. Nimrata, Nimrada, not Nimarata. Nimrata. Makes it all the more slurrier, you know what I mean? Because Nimrod is a biblical Nimrod, Nimrod, which sounds like Nimrata, is a biblical reference to a mighty man or hunter. It's in the book of Genesis. Genesis 10, 8 through 12 for all you evangelicals who are listening. But it's also slang for idiot or jerk. Which do you suppose Trump intended? So, what can I say? Welcome to the third grade mentality of the New Hampshire Republican primary, the first primary in the nation. Now, as I said, if you thought that Trump was so dominant after the Iowa caucuses that he would cruise in New Hampshire, the opposite is the case. What I like to say is when the going gets tough, the tough go racist. And Trump is using racism in so many ways. Just this week, to separate voters from aligning with Haley. Trump's message is that Haley is the other. He's othering her. And that she is not like us. Oh, she's more like me, but not like us if us is you and Trump and you're similar. It's political racism 101. You know, Trump starts with the racist name mangling, but then gets more insidious when he puts out disinformation that Haley's immigrant parents disqualify Haley to be president. What? Haley, whose birthday is Saturday, as I speak today, Friday, Saturday is Haley's birthday, the Saturday before the New Hampshire primary. Born January 20th, 1972. My goodness, what a young pup. In Bamberg, South Carolina. It was the first state to secede from the Union, but was part of the United States when she was born. Maybe MAGA types spreading rumors about Haley should apologize for their ignorance by singing her a chorus of happy birthday. But the truth is, by virtue of the 14th Amendment, any person born on American soil is entitled to claim U.S. citizenship by birthright. You're born here on American land, American soil. You are a citizen, no matter what your parents. If they're immigrants, if they're other animals, if you're born on American soil, you're American. Now, Asian American history mavens will note the law was solidified in the Wong Kim Ark case, where a Chinese American born in San Francisco in the 19th century, but who then visited China as an adult, was barred from returning to America. Wong Kim Ark sued for his reentry and won a Supreme Court decision that has been the law since March 28, 1898. And you can go to my ALDEF blog, aaldef.org/blog, and click on some previous posts, columns that I've written in ALDEF and on for NBC News about this very issue. Wong Kim Ark, it's established. And wouldn't you know that people who know the law just come out and say, all right, we need to reverse the law. They don't just lie about the law. They say, well, I mean, and Trump has done it himself. But this time he just lied about it. He said, start spreading the rumors that, because Haley's parents are immigrants, Nikki Haley's not qualified to be president. No, Nikki Haley was born in America on American soil. She is qualified. Her parents can't be president as immigrants, but Nikki Haley can. Anyway, isn't it funny? Vivek Ramaswamy is for reversing birthright citizenship. And I imagine so is Nikki Haley. But the law is the law since 1898. Unfortunately, too many MAGA types fall for the racist logic of Trump and spread the disinformation. Now, this isn't the first time Trump has used a birther approach to attack opponents. Barack Obama, right? Trump said he was born in Africa. Trump said, hey, he doesn't have a birth certificate from America. Oh, yes, he does. Obama, born in Hawaii, the 50th state in the nation, on American soil. Trump had to apologize or admit he was wrong. But here's the thing. Trump uses racism because it works emotionally on voters. Far better than comparing stances on, say, immigration policy. And that's why, in many ways, Trump's racism is perfectly lodged against Haley because she believes in so many of the racist immigration policies that Trump embraces. I mean, what's she going to do? I mean, it's coming back at her. And she said, well, I actually agree with that guy and his racist ideas. I mean, Haley is against sanctuary cities. She's pro-deportation of the undocumented. She believes illegals are the cause of crime. All of it. It's rhetoric that's indistinguishable from Trump. But Trump knows that beyond policy, the most important thing among aggrieved Republican voters in the MAGA cult is he's white and she's not. That's his opening to keep all his voters in line. Get all the undecideds to stay in line, the Republican GOP line. And since Haley can't afford to lose a single GOP voter, she doesn't fight back, especially not on the racism part. So, you know her type from work, right? If you're an Asian American, Haley is the careerist who thinks she's there because of her merit. Racism, oh, she's had to overcome it if it were a real problem. But Haley stays positive and repeats her mantra, I got here on my own. America is a great country. It's the content of my character, not the color of my skin, that's important. And it's fine to be so positive, but then along comes Trump to dump on her character and see only the color of her skin. I mean, last night, Haley just smiles like she did on CNN Town Hall this week, saying she knows Trump and that he lies. I know him, she says. And that's as hard as she attacks, calling Trump a liar. She doesn't go, or she doesn't even get to the pants on fire part. Just say he's a liar. He's our liar. I'll still vote for him. That's how you got to play when you lose by 30 points in Iowa and you're close in New Hampshire. You play the Nikki Haley way, and it's really kind of sad. You know, when she said America is not a racist country this week, no surprise, really. During the Iowa caucuses, she already omitted slavery as a cause of the Civil War. But to say that racism is not in the institutional DNA of the U.S., from slaveholding founding fathers to the stripping of land from Native Americans, it's so disingenuous. A moral person can do it with a straight face, but Haley does it with a passion. The truth is, America has always tilted toward the preservation and protection of white supremacy. And it's especially true with Asians in America. From the Chinese exclusion to the exclusion of other Asian groups, Japanese, Koreans, Filipinos. Oh, and let's not forget Asian Indians in 1917, specifically in the West. And then it went on. Racist quotas installed in the 1924 Immigration Act. The racism toward Asians in America is so real. It's such a big part of America. And it wasn't until 1965, when the racist quotas were lifted through the Hart-Celler Act, that Asians were allowed to trickle in. An Asian American community could be formed, a large one. Racist quotas were out. Haley may say that Trump lies, but what is Haley doing in failing to acknowledge the racism past and present in America, especially toward Asians? You know, here's the sad part about this whole episode that's coming down the pike, with Trump calling Haley Nimrata, Haley smiling and saying, oh, Trump lies. Trump gave Haley an opening to be her true, authentic self. But it only revealed Haley, the political animal, who it appears is not much better for a diverse 2024 America than Trump himself. Check out my column. It's on the ALDEF blog, the Asian American Legal Defense and Education Fund. ALDEF, AALDEF.org/blog. But it's the truth. Haley, I just want her to be honest about the role racism played in Asians coming to America and Asians being prevented from being fully American. I mean, that's the thing. Now, the circumstances under which her father and mother came here, well, they came here legally. They were teachers at the college in South Carolina. But I dare say they probably were teaching there because they couldn't get jobs in mainstream white universities, not at that time. And to say that it wasn't racist, that they had to endure, her family had to endure what they did, that's being a racism denier. I mean, if you were on the fence about Nikki Haley thinking, oh, well, she's not that bad compared to Trump. She's Trump in a dress. And that wouldn't make RuPaul happy. So, what else? Nikki, the racism denier. We talk a little about the news. Professor Dan. Maybe he'll join us next week. But a lot coming up. Let's see. We've got the primary coming up next week. I don't know. DeSantis is back. He's back campaigning, but I think he's gone. I think he's out. He's starting to fire members. I really think he's gone. And unless he pulls, I don't think he's going to beat Haley. I think Haley's probably going to come in second. But I'd seen some polls that show that Haley and Trump are tied. So I don't know what poll to believe. It's the January 23rd primary. So we have the 20th, 21st, 20th. So Tuesday. Yeah, they vote on Tuesday. That's why the caucuses were strange, because it was on a Monday that the caucus was. But they vote on the 23rd in New Hampshire. New Hampshire is a funny place because it's very there are some rural parts of New Hampshire, but for the most part it's a suburb of Boston. I know this because I once took that to heart, and I tried to hitchhike from deep in the bowels in New Hampshire to Boston It took me the better part of an evening in snowy, cold weather. And when I told my mother about it, because I was just a young pup, she had a heart attack. She was in California. Oh, my son. Don't worry, Mom. I got the ride from two guys, and they dropped me off in Boston, and then I took the subway home, and it was fine. But yeah, New Hampshire is a cold, bleak place. And here's the thing. I've never revealed this to people, but I have a disease, honest to God, where when exposed to cold, turn white. I mean, you thought it was other reasons, but no. That's why I got to bundle up. All right, so we'll talk more about New Hampshire next week. I just think Nikki Haley isn't going to do as well as, well, I think she's going to improve from New Hampshire being like more than 30 points behind. She might come within 10. That would be a victory for her. That would be seen as a victory if she could, because then she could say, look, I'm closing in. Give me more money. It's all about money. Speaking of which, we're talking mostly about the Republicans because they're looking for someone to call their standard bearer. You don't hear much about the other Democrats who are running, and there are other Democrats. And I want to talk about Marianne Williamson for a little bit, only because over the last couple of days, I have seen Dean Phillips, the Democrat who is also running, and he's like about equal to Marianne Williams in the poll, like 6% compared to, Biden with, 60, 70% on the Democratic side. He's not taking the also ran seriously, but I think he ought to. And I think people who are Democrats or just people who are voters need to hear from others. But this was a telltale sign about Dean Phillips. He has received money from Bill Ackman, who is the hedge fund guy who was behind the anti-diversity push, not just in colleges, but also in business and industry. He wants to get rid of diversity, equity, and inclusion everywhere. And this is like phase 2 of affirmative action. Get rid of it everywhere. And he has given money to Dean Phillips, Democrat, which tells you something about how desperate people are when it comes to accepting money from people who really are abhorrent to the cause of democracy when it comes to people of color, blacks, indigenous, people of color. How can you take money from someone who's against diversity, equity, and inclusion and say you're for all the people? Dean Phillips has no problem doing that. But that's how desperate you are when you can't get airtime. No one interviews you, although I did see Dean Phillips get interviewed by CNN this week. But I just got an email from the Marianne Williamson campaign, and she puts out something called the woman card on a note. And I think it's unfair that people don't hear from her. People even say her name wrong. They're not being racist. They just don't know her. Marianne is her name, but I heard someone call her Marianne or Marianne Williamson. She's a writer. She's a good kind of spiritualist, not an evangelical, blowhard. She's a kind, spiritual woman. And so I follow her campaign. She writes this thing she wrote an email called the woman card. got it today. She says, throughout my career as an author and lecturer, I have never felt it in any I have never felt in any way limited by my gender. I never felt opportunities were denied to me because I am a woman. Let me tell you, that changes when you run for president. I had never taken the notion of bro culture very seriously before either. That one changes when you run for president too. I realize now that I had never fully understood the word misogyny or how much it drains all of us of life force. It's different than racism or anti-Semitism or homophobia because those are acknowledged character defects. Misogyny so permeates our cultural attitudes that most people don't even know when their attitudes are misogynistic. And I'm sorry to say that applies to women as well as men. From the beginning of my this is Marianne Williamson writing. From the beginning of my presidential campaign, I found myself at the effect of things I'd never experienced before. If something happened in my campaign, it was described one way. If it happened in the campaign of one of my male opponents, narrative was distinctly different, or the narrative was distinctly different. I'm kooky. They're profound. I was crazy. They were take charge. But the latest one really takes the cake. In every national poll, I'm ahead of my opponent, Dean Phillips. But according to Andrew Yang, I've run a noble and courageous campaign, but I should just let Dean take it from here. This is why it's important to me, because Andrew Yang is Asian American. Here's an Asian American who was seen as a kind of not quite liberal, not quite neocon. I don't know what he was. A third party guy, an entrepreneur who captured the public's attention, and now he's weighing in as an outsider saying, oh, let Dean Phillips take it from here. You sit back, Marianne. Marianne Williamson says, as Yang put it in his endorsement speech for Phillips, to my friend Marianne Williamson, you have run a noble, courageous campaign and have articulated many of the things that Americans should expect and deserve. I ask you to join us in challenging the true enemy. The true enemy is the political establishment that does not care about our families and communities, and a media cabal that will suppress or demonize those who want change on behalf of the people of this country. Marianne, Dean is our best choice, our best chance to change things. I'm looking forward to serving in his administration, and I would love for you to join us. Andrew, Dean Phillips isn't going to win. You're not going to get a job in the Phillips administration. Maybe in your dreams. But Marianne Williamson has a better chance of winning than Dean Phillips, because she stands for something. She's not a politician who would take money from Bill Ackman, who would kill diversity, equity, and inclusion programs. Marianne Williamson writes, besides being flabbergasted, I couldn't help wondering if Andrew would have dared do that were I a man. And I'm not even sure if Andrew knows. But as I tweeted when I saw the video of his speech, the days of a woman standing aside on the assumption that a man can do a better job are over. The days of a woman standing aside on the assumption that a man can do a better job are over. Here was Andrew Yang saying, move aside, Marianne. Let Dean take over. And Marianne she's not going to have it. She continues to write, I've learned from this experience what money and power can do. I mean, I knew it, but not like now. I've learned what prejudice and judgment can do. I mean, I knew it, but not like now. I've learned from this experience what misogyny can do. I mean, I knew it, but not like now. I'm even more grateful than ever before to those who have gone before me and stood tall for what they believed in spite of belittling by others. I've learned from this experience what politics can do, but I have faith in my heart in what love can do. So, a message from Marianne Williamson. It's in an email she sent to people who follow her. It's called the Woman Card, and she writes it. You can go follow her on Substack, and also you can go to Google Marianne Williamson for president, find the website where you can go, and if you're so moved, you can help her out. I'm kind of agnostic here, but I just want to. I mean, I'll talk about Nikki Haley, Donald Trump, Joe Biden. No endorsement, but I'm talking about them so that you'll hear about them. And that's especially true when it comes to people like Dean Phillips and Marianne Williamson, where you will not hear about these other candidates. I know a lot of Democrats are saying, well, you know, we need all hands on deck because if we splinter up with these different third parties, it's going to be a tighter race than anyone could have imagined between the Democrats and the Republicans. But I think it's important to hear these different voices. Not just Dean Phillips, not just Cornel West, not just, well, Bobby Kennedy Jr., he's getting his voice out. He's got money. But Marianne Williamson, like I said, she gets no respect. And people should at least hear her out, because I think if you do, you'll be surprised. Women make sense. All right, so I think that's going to be it. You know, I end up talking about sports at the end. Oh, the Warriors, the sad Warriors. You know, they missed out on Pascal Siakam. They didn't get him from the Raptors. He went to, who did he go to? He went to the Indiana Pacers. Pacers have a good little team. The Warriors, it looks like they may not get the person or people they want. They want to keep the young guys because the young guys are still young. They just haven't been able to play well. I'm talking about Moses Moody and Jonathan Kuminga and Brandon Pajimski. But they have more value than the old guys, who they'd like to get rid of because they're more pricey and expensive, but no one wants them. So the Warriors season looks like it's not quite dead, but it's going to take a miracle. No, they're just dispirited, and even more so now that a coach, they had a coach die. This has got to be one of the worst years ever for a franchise. Draymond Green gets suspended. All the veteran players don't play well. A coach dies. So tough times for the Golden State Warriors. Tomorrow on Saturday, the San Francisco 49ers take on the Green Bay Packers, and that'll be an interesting game because no one expected the Packers. People expected, maybe the Dallas Cowboys win there, but the Cowboys lost. Embarrassingly so. So now it looks like the 49ers and the Packers, and I hope the 49ers prevail, but you never know. I mean, you could say, I I've gamed this out on paper. 49ers are going to win, but, you know, you got to play the game. You got to play the game. So who knows? Who knows? So that's it for me today. Have yourselves a good weekend. I'll talk to you again Monday, maybe Tuesday on primary day. We'll see what kind of stops get pulled as we come into New Hampshire. Like I said, this is it. I mean, Haley's got to do really well, otherwise it's over. DeSantis has to do better than Haley, which is unlikely, so probably over for him. And Donald Trump wants to end it all now because he's got a lot of legal liability. And this is why he's pressing for that immunity case. He's pressing for presidential immunity so that wipes out a couple of his, a couple cases, or could, maybe 3 out of the 4, maybe all 4. But clearly, he's got to win in order to get rid of all of them. That's the only real guarantee that he can escape any kind of conviction. So we'll see how desperate things go over the weekend. Oh, yeah, and Nikki Haley, the racism denier, her birthday's on Saturday. You know, you just like to wish. I mean, if you know it's someone's birthday, you like to wish them a happy birthday. I mean, if you may not vote for her, you may not want her to be president of the United States or win in New Hampshire, but you can be civil and wish her a happy birthday. Whereas Donald Trump would say, "Happy birthday, Nimrata." Okay, we like to close with a little meditation, just to feel good. A little loving kindness. It helps. A little self-love, then offering to others, and then it comes back twofold. Hey, it works. That's just the way the equation works. And so, as I wish for me, I wish for you. May you be safe. May you be happy. May you be healthy. And may you live with ease. Emil Guillermo here. Till next time. Mahal Gita.